I'm hearing a lot about presents being delayed this year, and I'm like, what? I'm Saara Chaudry, and this is KN Explains the Global Supply Chain Crunch. Lots of stuff, like products we buy and use in our everyday life, are taking a lot longer to get from point A to point B. So if you're doing some holiday and Christmas shopping, you might want to get started because the stuff you want might not be available or it might take longer to get it. Okay, enough with the Christmas list nagging. Why exactly is this happening? Well, let's start with the basics. What is a global supply chain? To put it simply, a supply chain is a network. It's how a company connects with suppliers to produce and deliver a product to a final buyer. So that video game console you're after, it relies on a supply chain to get to you. The computer you use, that phone or tablet you own? Yep, you guessed it. It went through a complex supply chain to end up at your fingertips. Now, supply chains are complex and they can look really different depending on the product. So let's pick one that is feeling the crunch more than some others. Microchips. Microchips are a key component to almost all of the electronics we use in our lives, including the examples I just mentioned. So let's take a look at the average life of a microchip as it passes through the supply chain. First stop, the mine. Microchip's main ingredient is silicon, and silicon needs to be mined from the earth. Once it is mined, it's transported to factories or manufacturing facilities where it's used to create a microchip. That microchip can head to a number of places depending on its intended use, but for our sake, let's say it's going to be used in a video game console. Depending on where it's manufactured, the chip might need to go to a port and hop on a container ship to travel across water, arriving at another port. A truck then comes to the port and picks up the container with the microchip and drives it to the video game manufacturing facility. Once the video game console is made, it hops on another truck and heads to one of the many places from which you can order it. A store, a warehouse, or a distribution facility, for example. Then, depending on how you purchased it, it can either be shipped to your home or you can go and pick it up in a store. Who knew a microchip would make so many stops in the supply chain before it ends up in your hands? All right, now that we know the ins and outs of a microchip global supply chain, why is this stuff being delayed? Well, there are many reasons, but according to Johnny Runtasanthanam, a professor of operations management at the Schulich School of Business, there was one really big one that has complicated almost everything.
The pandemic simply introduced an event which was unexpected, was global in nature. COVID-19 certainly made things a lot harder.
Almost every supply chain has been affected by COVID-19, from manufacturing to transport to even consumer buying behaviors. Over the pandemic, our demand for stuff has gone up, but the amount of products factories can produce has gone down. There's more COVID-19 rules to follow, and fewer people have been available to work. In our friendly microchips case, this can affect 3 key points on the supply chain. Here, when the chips are manufactured, here when they're used to create video game consoles, and here when they're ready to ship as working game consoles. There's also a shortage of the shipping containers that move all of those parts around. Some are stranded in different parts of the world because of new COVID-19 rules. In other places, there aren't enough truck drivers to move the containers fast enough. And when there's a shortage of something, prices go up, making shipping really expensive. So let's recap. Almost every aspect of the global supply chain has experienced problems due to the pandemic. Consumer behaviors have changed, factories have shut down / reduced output, shipping ports and trucks are moving less product, and costs of shipping have skyrocketed. Some of the types of products that have been most affected are toys, electronics, seasonal decorations, and cars. They're all in short supply, so if any of those are on your holiday wish list, you better get shopping ASAP because they could be a little bit hard to find. So, is it really all doom and gloom for supply chains? Will we really need to start our shopping way ahead of time in order to get the gifts we're looking for next holiday season? Well, hopefully not. And here's why. The general consensus is that the supply chain is recovering, and
Optimistically, maybe sometimes midsummer, okay, we may get back to some semblance of things moving in a more synchronized manner.
there are also many companies who are looking at moving manufacturing closer to home. So that means
Is it worth it to pay 3 or 4 or 5 cents fewer buying from very far away relative to buying something that's closer, right? More local.
by doing so, the companies reduce the number of points in their supply chain, like, say, a port, for example, and hopefully protect them against future supply chain crunches. Another thing that may be helping is companies are adjusting to the new buying habits from customers. Although the demand for products for the home was a surprise at the beginning of the pandemic, companies have had a while to figure it out, and they are adjusting to the increase in demand for these products. Toy companies like Canadian company Mastermind Toys
stocked up on our holiday toys earlier to make sure that there was lots of extra time for people to start thinking about and coming to look for the toys and the gifts that they want to give at the holiday season.
They are aware of how much longer products will take to reach their stores and are doing their best to adjust to keep the shelves stocked with the toys people are looking for. And, as we said, you can also help with the crunch. Now that you know that things could take longer to get to you, you should give yourself more time to shop for the products you want.
The number one thing that I always tell people is to make that wish list early. And put a number of different things on the wish list to give whoever is shopping lots of different options.
All right, that's it for KN Explains. For CBC Kids News, I'm Saara Chaudry. Supply chains are complicated. There was a lot of research and interviews that went into producing this piece. So I spoke to Johnny Rungtasanthanam, Canada Research Chair in Supply Chain Management and a Professor of Operations Management at the Schulich School of Business. I also interviewed Suze Anderson, VP of Communications at Mastermind Toys. And even though you didn't see him in the video, I spoke to Kai Huang, an Associate Professor at McMaster University who specializes in operations, who helped us understand supply chains and what is causing the crunch. I also referenced information found on the following sites: the New York Times, CBC, Bloomberg, MIT Sloan Review, and the Washington Post.